Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Quentin Tarantino's ninth film. In a way, it's the film that combines his over-the-top violence and funny one-liners with a real rich moral premise. And I was going to originally do a video commentary, just me talking about my assessment of the film and what it means for the culture and the history of Hollywood and the difference between an actual person and a fictional person. But I decided to bounce upward and invite in two Hollywood pros, writer actor Stuntman Tim Clemente and writer-director singer Matthew Marsden. Let's throw to you first, Tim. Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining me. It was from my good friend Matthew that I learned that you had seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 4 or 5 times in the theaters. I just want to mention that you have been a consultant on films. You're a former FBI special agent. You are an actor and a writer, and you've got stunt performing work. So I can understand why you identify with the milieu and the plot line and so on. Plus, you're old enough to remember the Tate LaBianca murders. There's just so much in this movie. So maybe our challenge is the three of us, we've got so much to say about it, we have to kind of keep pressing pause, or in my case, keep freezing so that you have a chance to speak. What was your impression of Once Upon a Time in America, the first time you ran through it?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Oh, did I say America?
Yes.
I got Sergio Leone on the brain. That's the problem. The movie has so many allusions. Yes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Thank you.
Well, I think first we should give a spoiler warning for anybody who hasn't seen the movie in case we discuss things that you don't want to know before you see the movie. So wait and watch this after you see the movie. So first of all, take our suggestion that you should see the movie. Mm-hmm. And now, Pat, the reason I recommended it to you and the reason I recommended it to Matt is because I'm not a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino. I like a couple of his movies, but I don't, as a rule, like everything he does. And this was different in that the characters were so compelling, both good, bad, and indifferent. They were incredible characters, and the storyline tells a tale that Hollywood rarely tells, where good people try and do good things to stop bad people from doing bad things. And that is, we've gone to all these anti-heroes where the hero is really a bad guy, but you kind of feel for him and you don't know, is he good or bad in the beginning, in the end, what's happened? This is clear. These are people with a moral purpose, and that moral purpose, I think, outweighs any negativity as far as language or anything else in the film. It's an incredible movie. It's the movie I've seen more than any other movie in a theater because of how incredible it is.
Well, I know you're a regular movie consumer, so that says a lot about the movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about actor Rick Dalton, a kind of fading early 60s, late 50s TV actor, and the relationship between him and Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, his stuntman. And it's very hard to say what genre this movie is. Generically, it's an action film, but it's a fairy tale. It's Once Upon a Time. It has a happy ending where reality had a brutal ending. It's a buddy movie. It's sort of Don Quixote and the loyal Sancho Panza. It's it's got a fluid line blurring as to which genre we're dealing with here.
I agree. It's the thing that Quentin Tarantino does so well in this movie is bring people to life that are rich. They're rich in so many ways. I mean, the Sharon Tate character. You see her as a lovely, beautiful, innocent human being. And anybody that knows the true story of what happened at that time in 1969 knows what a horrible, tragic end she met with at the hands of some truly diabolical people. There is evil in the world, and I think the evil is displayed by this group of, wandering, aimless human beings that are following Charles Manson and willing to do his every bidding to the point of acting purely the way the devil would want them to act. And they literally, it's in the dialogue, literally describing that. So when you see that juxtaposed against Cliff Booth, the Brad Pitt character, who is just trying to be a good guy. He's not perfect, he's not flawless, but he's trying to be a good guy. He's trying to be a good friend to his buddy Rick Dalton. And I think just that alone, you have a character that is being a man. And manliness, manhood, masculinity are all under assault in today's culture. And it's just great to see that somebody, Quentin Tarantino, realized that needs to be brought back to its proper society. And I believe it's done incredibly well.
Matt, there's a lot of talk among some Catholics who are more on the pearl clutchy side, who, because the movie has potty words and because there are acts of violence in it, it's a sin to go see movies like this. You've been, as a writer and an actor, in over 30 movies. Not all of them were about daily mass going saints, right? What do you say to people who just want a sanitized film world with no gritty action and nothing spoken in the vernacular of fallen people?
Well, I think, I mean, Tim and I, we talk about this all the time about the balance that has to be struck. And I think, like we would all agree that we don't want gratuitous nudity or anything like that. But the truth of the matter is with a movie like this, that it really does, apart from the fantastical element of it at the end, it actually does reflect pretty accurately the experience of that time, and it also, and I can tell you because I've seen actors have meltdowns like DiCaprio does in this film. It's completely accurate. So this sanitization of real life, I think, is a problem. Mainly because it's one of those things where, you're walking through life with blinders on. So when real life actually hits you, it's such a blow. And I also think that it's a denial of reality. To me, I kind of accept all those different things and you work with what you have. It doesn't mean that you don't strive to be better. And, when you write, Tim's a writer as well. I've written a couple of films. You don't strive for the great. But the truth of the matter is, like, I Am That Man, my film here, is about a Navy SEAL. And I can tell you this, they don't, these guys are people that go out and they have a very difficult job to do. But they might drop a few F-bombs now and then, or they might but that's just reflective of who they are in reality. And once you start stepping away from that, there's a switch that goes off that people understand that it's inauthentic. I think it's a real mistake. I think it's a real massive mistake to pursue that. And, by the way, in addition, and this is now to all the Catholics out there, what have you guys done, if you want to be so pious about it, to go out and promote Catholic filmmakers so we can make better films?
Yeah, preach it.
Nothing, for the most part. Pearl clutching, sitting there and going on about how bad Hollywood is, while there are people out here duking it out, trying to make really good films, and there's no funding, right? So people can discuss that, but unless they're going to be active and do something about it, then for the most part, right?
No, it's true. Unless it's the bang on the nose Christian movie message kind of film, and I'm not opposed to them, but they don't cross over beyond the grassroots, a church circle ticket buying group by and large. Pardon me?
For them,
100%.
But when we look back into history and we talk about the great movies, right? I mean, even as Catholics, we look and we say, well, The Passion. He couldn't get the money for that.
Yeah.
Right? You got the biggest guy, the biggest star in the world, one of the greatest directors of all time, and he couldn't get The Passion, which is about Jesus, made because people wouldn't fund him. So he had to go and do it himself. So, I mean, I think that tells you that. But I don't want to digress too much into that and really stay on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's absolutely a masterpiece in filmmaking. It's a masterpiece in acting and in writing on the whole. The whole thing is utterly brilliant. It's brilliant.
I want to pick up something you said about exploitation and the showing reality in a fictional way that reflects reality without necessarily endorsing it. My answer to people who are bothered by potty words is to ask whether they think Shakespeare endorses murder and suicide, because plays like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet contain those things. There's Macbeth opens with witches doing actual hexes. Does that mean you're going to become a witch by going to see a performance of Macbeth? I don't think so. One thing that Tarantino has to be credited for is that he does not show nudity. All the talk about the Manson family, it's all about drugs, orgies, sex. They were constantly naked at the Spawn movie ranch. That's sort of something the press has harped on. The fact that they were completely, they had no filters whatsoever with their sexual behavior. Everybody was sleeping with everybody from the first moment they met. But when Cliff Booth's character, played by Brad Pitt, picks up Pussycat, one of the hitchhiking hippies. There's nothing in it for him except that he cares about this lost girl. She offers some sexual favors. He declines. And so he goes to the ranch. And at that point, let me just throw to you a little bit, Tim. That was almost a Western movie within the movie when he walks from one end of the Spahn movie ranch to see for sure if George Spahn, who owned the ranch and with whom Cliff collaborated 8 years previous as a stuntman. What's in it for him except for a guy doing the right thing about people he doesn't even know?
It was entirely a scene from the OK Corral.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff making that walk from his car, from that beautiful yellow Cadillac that represents civilization, through absolute anarchy down this dusty trail to his old friend Mr. Spahn's house to go check on him. It's an incredible scene.
Mm-hmm.
The tension is unbelievably built up by all the characters that are looking at him on the left. People are coming out of like saloon doors, sitting on dirty mattresses on the sidewalk and staring at him. They're all glaring at him.
Yeah.
He is the object of 100% derision from everyone around him because he's questioning them. He's just checking up on somebody. He's questioning them. And it's a scene that is built up with incredible tension.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's going to happen at the end of that scene. It's very well done. Brad Pitt, I think, does a phenomenal job throughout the movie, but especially in this scene. And it doesn't turn out the way he expected or the way we expected.
Right.
And everything is possible going into that. And he truly is a cowboy in the West because he's facing desperados all around him. And yet what does he do? He doesn't back down. He doesn't cower. He doesn't say no. He doesn't accept their rebuttals of his argument that he wants to go see his friend George. And so again, it's a man knowing that he has to do something. He has to act. He has to do the right thing. And he's going to do it undeterred. And that's a rare character in a Hollywood movie these days, to see a man being a man for the sake of another man or a woman or anyone else, standing up and doing right in the face of danger and evil.
I thought he was going to buy the farm. I thought they were going to kill him.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The other thing is, Pat, is that it's masterful filmmaking because Tarantino makes you think all the time that that's going to happen. Like, you're like, when is he going to get killed? When is this going to take a turn for the worse? Because we know in his other films that he's done that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. And that the bravery as a filmmaker to do that is unbelievable, because you can imagine, I mean, me and Tim have been in these situations where you sit down with producers and they'll go, oh, well, this has to happen here, right?
Right.
He's at such a level that he just goes, no, I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. And another point about that is Cliff is a war hero. So he's seen evil up close, right? So here's the other thing that you guys, if you've seen it, or if you're about to see it, I hope you're not watching it. If you're watching this, if you're about to see it, he has utter confidence in who he is, and there's a stillness about him. There's no bravado. He's not walking up there like, hey, he's just calm all the way through, right? He's like the center, the eye of the storm, right? And you're sitting there going, oh, and then at a point, he does use measured violence.
He does. It's proportional.
It's totally proportional. He does what he does, and we all know, like, from that moment, he could go and wipe them all out, right? He could go and clear the lot, and he gets in his car and he drives off, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's an amazing example of masculinity in the sense that he hasn't got to prove anything to anybody. He does what he does. He goes to find out whether his old friend, I mean, they're not even close. They used to see each other. But he senses that something's off with these weirdos. And he goes and checks it out. And then he's cool and he leaves. And it's only when he's provoked that he responds proportionately and then leaves.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
it's just terrific stuff, really.
Yeah. Tim, the true masculinity versus the false, that seems to be a running sub theme here. I don't even know if maybe it's just something because Tarantino put all of his heart into this story, which may be even semi-autobiographical. Cliff Booth is sort of the man Rick Dalton wants to be. And And Cliff is constantly affirming him. You're Rick effing Dalton, don't you forget it. Even when near the end, another spoiler alert, when it's clear that the relationship might be over because he just Rick Dalton ran out of money and he has to let his longtime friend go, he never really thanks him. He just says it's the end of the line. And what does Cliff Booth say? Good move. Yeah, makes sense for you. He doesn't abandon him. So flip it to the feminine side. Tarantino has said that that Margot Robbie's performance in the character of Sharon Tate is sort of the heart of the film. This beautiful, very pregnant, young 26-year-old actress, very childlike, goes to the movie theater in Westwood just to see and be so thrilled at how ordinary people are affected by her comedy. True feminine right there. And almost there's a youthful echo of that in the young girl, the Trudy actress character. Another true feminine who dispenses wisdom to a very broken Rick Dalton reading that Western pulp book. So, and meanwhile, back to the masculine just for a second, you've got Cliff Booth, but then you've got Tex on the other side, false masculine, ultra-violent. You've got the crazy Charles Manson, who only appears in one scene. So there's this battle. Who am I? What's the role of violence? Is there a good use of violence? And this movie answers with a resounding, yes, there is a good use of violence.
Yeah, and I would say that the Tex character, that would be what some people refer to as toxic masculinity, when in reality, toxic and masculine are two completely opposite concepts. Mm-hmm. A masculine person is one who defends the weak, stands up for what's right, and does what's right. That's what Cliff Booth is. There's the question about the whole past with his wife, okay, but he was a war hero, as Matt said, so in this case, being the time period we're looking at, that means either World War II or the Korean War.
Probably Korean War.
Yeah. And so we look at that and we see he was a war hero. He's not bragging about that. He's doing what has to be done. The Tex character is toxic evil. It's not toxic masculinity. He's the opposite of Cliff Booth in every single way. Mm-hmm. He threatens the women he's with, the young women, when he's in the car about to go to the scene towards the end. And when he does that, you can see he doesn't respect the women that are in that car with him. He says, is any one of you calling me a liar? He's in their face. He is a little man, a very little man, mm-hmm. who's trying to project the image of manhood, and he fails miserably. What he projects is pure evil, and he says it when he calls himself mm-hmm. the devil, and that's just the only apropos description that somebody like that should have. Whereas Cliff Booth, again, not a perfect character, but trying perfectly mm-hmm. to do what he can, to be a man, to be a friend, and to be honorable in every circumstance that he deals with. Mm-hmm. And it's an incredible example of, as Bishop Barron says in his review, the virtues.
Mm-hmm. I rewatched it last night because I wanted to have it one more time in my head before you guys talked with me about this. And the scene where it's a quick flashback of Cliff on a boat. He's got diving gear, and he's had a drink. He's got a beer. He's uncorked a beer, and he's fighting with his wife. And she makes a reference to her sister Natalie, which I thought was a sort of a dim allusion to Natalie Wood, who also died off the coast of L.A. under mysterious circumstances. But he aims accidentally. He's sitting with this arrow shooter, whatever the word is.
Spear gun.
Spear gun. Thanks. Spear gun. Thanks. It takes a pro. Spear gun.
Like the bullet shooter.
Yes, the anti-fish wireless instrument. And I thought maybe there was a chance that he didn't. People think he killed her, but it may have been an accidental death, because front and center in his little stuntman abode behind the Van Nuys Theater, there's a big painting of his wife, the blonde woman. So. But again, there's no cheap grace in this movie. That question is not resolved, succinctly or clearly. But it does give Cliff a kind of dangerous quality, and I thought that came out to humorous effect in the dust up with Bruce Lee, which I did not see coming. This icon of Hong Kong films and all the Bruce Lee mythology just kind of slapped around a little bit. How did that scene strike you, Matt?
Well, the thing about that is, and you see this a lot, I mean, I've been very fortunate to work with some real heroes, right? In the films that I've worked with some real heroes, some real guys that have fought valiantly for our country. And you see it all the time on set with guys walking around thinking they're tough guys. And I see, like, as Tim will tell you, like stone cold killers, like right there, that have gone over, they've parachuted into hot zones, they've done these incredible things. And they look at these actors as they walk past and they're like, it's kind of funny, right? And I felt like that scene really resonated because of that. Like, he's sitting there and, Cliff is this war hero that has done all these amazing things. He knows that he's the real deal, but he's just laughing there at this guy who, look, there's no doubt that Bruce Lee was an amazing martial artist. There's no doubt. But there, it's like, number one, stop being an egomaniac, right? Like, keep it on the down low. And number two, all right, I'm going to take you down a couple of notches. But it wasn't Cliff being an egomaniac about it. He's like, okay, you're going to call me out. All right, boom. And Tim, how many times have you seen that on set? As you go on and there's like former Delta guys, SEAL team guys, and actors are walking around because they did their
they said their lines.
Yeah, with their trainer, and they trained for 6 months to do a film, and now all of a sudden they're ninjas, right?
No, it wasn't Cliff bragging like you just said. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't doing anything. He was reacting to the braggadocious, over-the-top character of Bruce Lee. And stunt buddies of mine that worked at the time of Bruce Lee say that's exactly the way he was on set. He was pontificating all the time about how tough. And hey, I am and always have been a huge Bruce Lee fan. Growing up when I was 13 years old, my room was wallpapered in Bruce Lee posters. And I still think he was an incredible human being and an incredible athlete, a credible fighter. But it doesn't mean he wasn't an arrogant guy on set. And so, Quentin Tarantino was at, I think it was a screening of the film just a few weeks ago, and he was asked to defend that scene where he's talking about, or somebody asked him about, Brad Pitt couldn't beat Bruce Lee. And I think it was one of Bruce Lee's family members that made the accusation. It was a totally salacious, ridiculous scene because Brad Pitt couldn't beat up Bruce Lee. And Tarantino said, Brad Pitt doesn't have to beat up Bruce Lee.
They're actors.
This isn't Brad Pitt. This is Cliff Booth, a war hero. And I'm telling you, Cliff Booth, the war hero, can beat up Bruce Lee because we saw it in the film. And we know that character, based on who he is, can beat Bruce Lee because he did. And that's the reality of it. And it's not, and he didn't, again, measured violence. He used a little bit of force against Bruce Lee, lets him knock him down, and then he uses Bruce Lee's anger and animosity towards the Brad Pitt character to toss him out of the way and unfortunately damaging a lovely car.
Into the car. That's totally true. Yeah, I thought it was kind of a bold move to take down a universally revered icon like that, Bruce Lee. That's why. Again, back to your point, Matt. He does the unexpected. There's no homage there. There's a kind of a gentle tweaking of egomania, which is afflicting poor Rick Dalton. Rick's sort of at the end of an era. He doesn't know if he can make the jump from television to movies. And I was thinking about just the broader sweep of the history of Hollywood, because I know Quentin Tarantino is a mega historian of films and of really arcane actors in movies that no one's heard of, that he would like to highlight and kind of resurrect. And that is when movies began to flourish, starting in France and in Southern California at the turn of the 20th century. Then they were all silent, of course, with subtitles. And then 1929, the talkies came in. Then talkies were all the rage. Then Technicolor. And then after the war, this little thing called television, invented in Russia and imported here, that began to threaten the movie industry. So you had this rise of all of these westerns, war-themed heroes, comedies. And it wasn't until the early 60s where film started to resurge again. And you can see the echo of this ebb and flow of which is the sexier, more cachet-bearing genre, movies or television, with the careers of old-time actors, the old-school guys like Robert De Niro. I mean, he's Bobby to me and to Tim. That was awkward. Yeah. Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson. You will not find these actors on television shows. It's like a hermetically sealed section, like an attic, right? But now that's TV and movies are sort of almost on an equal footing now. But in 1969, which was really, this is what I want to ask. The night that Sharon Tate and the LaBianca family and all the innocent people were murdered, that was sort of the death of the 60s ideal of true love, peace. That was a dagger in the heart of that whole era. And it seems that through this story in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's a good man who's not afraid to brandish strength who prevents it. It becomes the bell that doesn't ring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. As far as wish fulfillment goes, the single greatest example of wish fulfillment at the end of a film I've ever seen and probably has ever been done. And the beautiful thing about it is you see the evil people plotting, planning, discussing what they're going to do and why they're going to do it. And why are they going to do it? Some ridiculous arcane idea they came up with while on an acid trip. And at the same time, you see a character on an acid trip. And that's who they end up fighting. And despite the fact that he's under the effects of a drug, he still does what needs to be done. Now, is it over the top what happens to Squeaky Fromm? No, not Squeaky Fromm.
Yeah, Sadie.
Sadie.
Yeah.
Is it over the top? Hey, if I have a knife in my side and the person who just put that knife in my side is trying to do more damage to me, there's nothing I wouldn't do. And so what level of violence is too much violence in that case? I don't think we can say. I don't think we can say that he went too far. He's fighting an enemy literally to the point of what we think might be the end of his life at that moment. And thankfully it's not. But the fighting, he uses what's around him, whether that's a telephone, a mantle, a picture frame on a wall, or a brick wall, or a table.
I hate to laugh. Any available hard, flat surface.
He uses, not necessarily just flat, there's corners too.
That's true.
He uses the weapons at his disposal. And those weapons are not the same weapons that the evildoers came in using, knives and guns. And so, is a brick wall too much for a person that has a knife? I don't think so. I thought it was rather apropos. I loved it. It didn't bother me in the least. And then Brandy, just a wonderful, always been my favorite song my whole life. Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be. I want to change that from Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a wonderful dog you would be. Because that dog was incredible. Brad Pitt and his dog Brandy had an amazing relationship. Fidelity, loyalty, bravery on both parts. And it was incredible.
But don't you think as well that, you know what you said, Pat, it was this like free love and peace and all that. Be careful what you wish for, right, when you take away those boundaries, right? Because eventually it always ends up in some kind of extreme behavior, right? So you have this free love, this we want to be able to do whatever we want to do. And then if you think about towards, when it gets to that point, Rick has gone and got married, and he's settling down, and he's there with his buddy. And so, like you said, it's ending that era, but also it's showing you back that he's got stability, because we can also look and say, what is really important? I mean, this is, I think, a really important theme throughout the film, is having yourself ordered correctly, right? So what is important in life? Okay, so there you have Rick, and he's crying, and he's like, I'm a washed up mess, I'm a loser. And he goes to his palatial Hollywood home, sits in his pool, and cries into his cornflakes. And then you see Cliff driving back to the back end of Beyond, getting into his trailer, totally content. He's completely content with who he is and his life. I mean, he wants to be, he wants to be more. Obviously, he has his desires to be more, and he wants to get, but he's not miserable. Yeah. He's completely ordered correctly. And you see that Rick, actually, when he goes away, he's doing these westerns that he doesn't really want to do. This change, he comes back, he's married, and there's this clash, right? It's almost like you're going back to the way things were before, with a marriage. And he's kind of having that last hurrah with his best friend at the end. and they defeat this. I don't want to say progressivism, but you know what I'm saying. So,
just licentiousness, moral chaos.
Yeah,
and
they
violence.
just hang on a second. These, there are boundaries that we have here, and in fact, they are more free than these losers, right? They are more free, and I think that helps. That's why you see Rick goes and he gets the flamethrower and whatever, and all of a sudden he becomes a real man. He does what he needs to do to take care of business. Now he takes it to the 10th degree because it's like it's Tarantino, right?
An allusion to Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, but there's so much like that. There's so much. And can I just point you back to something which I think you guys mentioned nudity. There's a scene in the film where all of us that have had a few too many curries. Look, and Brad Pitt's in his 50s, he takes his shirt off, and he's still in great shape. And I'm sitting there and I go, here we go, Sharon Tate, the pregnant woman, is going to look out the window, and she's going to be like, oh, Diet Coke time.
Yeah. Another bell that doesn't ring. By the way, I was the body double for that scene.
You were?
I'll mention that. Not the head, that was CGI.
Yeah,
I don't know why that's funny, but
you know what I mean. So another thing where it's almost if Tarantino was poking and going, this is what you keep expecting, and I can show you that I can deliver because I'm better than that. I'm better than taking the cheap payoffs.
You know what was great about that scene?
Matt, can you move just 1 inch to your right, Matt? And Tim, you're just a tiny bit close. That's fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah, you were going to say, Tim.
I was going to say that scene that you mentioned, Matt, where Cliff Booth is on the roof and pulls his shirt off. It goes into a flashback there where he remembers being on the set, working with the Green Hornet, working with Bruce Lee.
Which was a real show. This is just a quick point, Tim. The reality and fiction are interweaved seamlessly. There was no show Bounty Law. There was a show Lancer, right? There was a show The Green Hornet starring Bruce Lee. Anyway.
Yeah. And so in that flashback, he remembers that. And then what was really unique that I've never seen before is that the flashback is a memory for him. And he reacts to the flashback. He's on the roof. You get back to him on the roof again from the flashback scene where he throws Bruce Lee into the car and gets kicked off the set. And you see Cliff Booth on the roof go,
fair, he says, fair enough.
Yeah. And that was a wonderful, I think Tarantino must have made that up. I've never seen it done before where somebody flashes back and is thinking the flashback. It's not just they remember it and the audience sees what's in their mind. He's verbalizing by himself to himself about that flashback.
He's dialoguing about it, like he's soliloquizing on the episode that we just had a little window onto.
Yeah, and he's literally saying what our reaction is. Okay, that was fair that you got kicked off that set. I understand the animosity now between you and what's his name and his wife, the stunt gaffer and his wife. And
that's also proportional. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I deserve to get canned.
Also, what I'm saying is that he recognizes what we recognized.
Yeah.
And he's reflecting, Tim, at that moment because he's repairing an aerial on the top of a roof. It's those moments where you go, how on earth did I get here? You know what I'm saying? It's like...
Yeah, exactly. No, but what I mean is that as a man, as a human being, you said before he accepts his station in life, and that's a perfect example of it, where he's not saying, oh, they fired me for no reason, oh, my career. He's not doing any of that. He's like, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I did something stupid.
Rick would do that. Rick would have a tear fest.
Until the end.
That's right. And that's a good point.
Rick matures because of his relationship to Cliff.
Yeah.
And that maturing and that manliness that now comes out in Rick is him realizing that Cliff is probably the greatest example of a human being he knows.
Yeah, and I like the juxtaposition. It's almost a slam cut. Right after that anecdote, the memory flashback of throwing Bruce Lee into the car, and then he goes back in the present moment, fair enough. That's when the ice cream truck absurdly pulls in, and that's his first contact with Charles Manson, who only appears one time in this movie. Another time this juxtaposition happens is after the little girl playing the actress Trudy on the Western Lancer. It was so lovely. she says, "Oh, what are you reading?" "Oh, it's a book. It's not very good. I guess it's okay." "What's it about?" "Oh, it's a guy named Easy Breezy." And then her questioning about this character makes Rick realize this is a biography of me, and he starts to cry. And she kind of dispenses wisdom about what a true artist does. If I can be a little bit better, then I will. That's the kind of thing Cliff Booth would say. So then after that scene, Rick kind of cleans himself up a little bit. The next shot is Sharon Tate, almost like the more mature, like this little girl down the road, as a beautiful young woman and wife with child, with kind of embracing a hopeful future. I just love those juxtapositions that he does.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about the representation of marriage in the movie is Cliff gets married to mature, and he brings his wife home. At the end, when he says, "Hey,"
You mean Rick?
What did I say, Cliff?
Cliff, yeah, Rick.
So when Rick brings his wife home from Italy, he meets her on a film. He marries her. According to the plot we saw in the film, there's no marriages broken up by the relationship the way there was with the real Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and Jennifer Aniston and that whole thing. So you see that there's a progression in the relationship Rick Dalton has, both with his best friend, who he says, "I can't afford you anymore." And in reality, he's not just saying financially. He's saying, as a man, I can't afford to be this close to you anymore, because I now am bringing a wife home, and now the two flesh shall become one, and she is going to be my life partner now, not best friend. Yeah. So that's a normal progression of manhood. And I think all of us probably experience a little of that when we get married. And then you have the other characters that are married. You have Roman Polanski married to Sharon Tate, happily married, about to have a child. You have those relationships versus the lack of relationships in the whole hippie culture and all that. And here you have Rick Dalton coming out of his house, middle of the night, with a pitcher full of margaritas, screaming at these hippies about their car, their behavior, coming to pot, everything they're doing. And it's like, wow, that's a confrontation between conservatism, basically, and extreme no-rules liberalism. Yeah. And that confrontation was a confrontation that took place over decades. And I think the negative effects of what the extreme liberalism did to culture came out very well and was expressed very well by Rick Dalton in that moment. Yeah. And it was a cheering moment for people who know what that was really like back in the 60s. I mean, I was born in 1960, so I was only 9 years old at the time, but 9 years old, like Trudy at 8 years old, I'm old enough to realize how horrible and tragic the Sharon Tate, LaBianca murders were. And to see somebody dealing with those people the way they should have been dealt with was such a breath of fresh air.
Cathartic, all in, and the fact that the taboo that Tarantino broke here is that it's a man punishing an evil woman. Yeah. That's verboten. That's fighting words. One of the proverbs says, "There's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother." And what you said right now, Tim, about marriage in this movie made me think of the voiceover that Kurt Russell's character says. Something about a friend who was not a little less than a wife, a little more than a brother. Yeah. Finally, Rick is able. He's a man now, independent of Rick Dalton Incorporated, the fake one. He's now able to give himself away, and he realizes, I can't have 2 glasses of water, and he lets Cliff go. And Cliff's response is also unexpected. He doesn't go, as we said earlier. He accepts it. That, fair enough, in other words. You were going to weigh in, Matt. Sorry.
I was going to bring up Kurt Russell's character in this as the stunt coordinator, because his reason for not allowing Cliff onto the set was because his wife, initially, he's like, his wife says he killed his wife. So there's a clear delineation there about violence against women, because they're saying that it's unacceptable, right? Right? You don't just do it. And Kurt says, look, he's basically saying my relationship with my wife is more important than you, dude. But I'll go and I'll have a word with her and I'll speak to her. So again, it puts the primacy of marriage out there to say, look, I'm listening. He's listening to his wife.
Yeah.
And
he tells Cliff to stay away from her, stay clear of her.
Exactly, like just stay away. So I thought that was really interesting, and those themes like reoccur throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with Cliff when he's loading into the ambulance, and Rick Dalton says, "Hey, I'm going to come. What hospital are you going to? I'm going to come." And what does Cliff say to his best friend? No, stay with that beautiful wife of yours.
Yep.
Don't worry about me. You can come visit me tomorrow and bring bagels. And he's not whiny. He's not complaining about the fact that he's got a knife in his side, and he just fought with every ounce of strength he had to preserve his own life, Rick's life, and Rick's wife, Francesca's life. And so he, again, exhibits that cool, calm, war hero mentality that it's not about me. Yes, I may have saved everybody's life just now, but it's not about me. Go be with your wife. Mm-hmm. Stay there, be the husband to your wife. I'm fine. I'll see you tomorrow.
And you know what, Tim? There's no moral ambiguity there. None at all. Because he's absolutely, and I know this might sound silly, but he's absolutely convinced that what he did was right. I mean, I know that might sound silly, but in a lot of films today, there'd be some kind of like, should he have done it?
No, there would be, Matt, what there would be, we would have to show both sides. Let's look at both sides. We have to understand both sides. And what was clear was when Sharon Tate says to Rick Dalton's character, is everybody all right?
Yep.
And what does Rick Dalton say? Well, not the hippies.
They're sure as blank. Didn't go well for them.
Yeah. And so that, and that's fine. We don't need to feel bad for the hippies. We don't need to. They were there to commit murder. However you have to stop them, God bless. Go ahead. Do what you got to do. Because that's what just war is. It's using proportionate response to fight wrong, to fight evil. And that's what they did.
And we're invited as the audience to say, to the fate of the killer hippies, fair enough.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of the again, another genius part of this film is that, number one, we all know what happened. In a lot of movies that we don't know the ending of because it's not real, exactly what you're saying would happen, Tim. There'd be the argument that, oh, well, you don't know that they would have done that. You don't know what, that they could have gone on and killed people. Now we know what happened.
Yeah.
Right? So we're like, I don't care. And look, we're all loving husbands and loving parents. But I love the fact that he went around smacking her face into everything because we knew what they did in real life to Sharon Tate, which was just abhorrent. So there's that. It's cathartic, right? And here's the other thing to note about this film. I think, and it shows the power of film, it robs them of the victory.
Mm-hmm.
It robs them of what they wanted to go down in history. And what this has just done is, when I think of Sharon Tate, I don't think of a murdered woman and her baby. I think of this beautiful, happy woman that is still around. You know, like it's like in your head. It's great. They got their comeuppance. And so it just shows you when people talk about culture and how important movies are to the culture, to me, that just robbed them of that victory. Yeah. Right? It robbed them, and somewhere, Cliff went on to have a great life. Rick went on and had a bunch of kids, and so did Sharon Tate, and everything turned out fine. And I think it was a shock to me, because I don't think anyone's ever done this in a film before.
Yep.
To rob them of that, to change an actual historical event to be positive.
Yeah, and over time, that brand reset will only grow over time. I read an interview with Sharon Tate's living sister, who said when she saw the movie for the first time, she said she sobbed big tears. Literally, her shirt was wet with her tears. It was like her little sister brought to life again 50 years later.
Yeah. No, the Sharon Tate character was the most empathetic, adorable character I've ever seen in a movie. Like, there was nothing about her that I didn't look at it and say, wow, she's just, she's so nice. She's so happy. She's cheerful to everyone. She goes into a bookstore to buy a book for her husband, and the conversation she has with the old man at the bookstore, smiling to him. She's warm and friendly. She goes to the movie theater. She's smiling, warm and friendly to everyone. She turns down refreshments. No, I don't need that. I just really want to see the film. And it's like that character is the epitome of innocence. Yeah. And you know, at the end, my wife said to me 20 minutes before the end of the movie, I'm not staying for the rest of this. I cannot see him depict what happens to her. And I said, Karen, you don't know that's what it's going to be. And she said, of course that's what it's about. That's what this is. It's going to be about Sharon Tate and Charles Manson. I don't want to see that. And I said, well, just wait. If it gets bad, leave, but just wait. And she sat through it, and at the end she was like, she was all smiles. And I tell you, every time I think of this movie, I smile.
Yeah, me too.
That's the reason you just said, Matt, because the world has changed. That act, that horrible, heinous act, did not happen now. It didn't. We just went back in a time machine and changed the past.
The scene in the outside in the foyer, it was a very little, it's almost a throwaway scene, and it happens rather quickly, and it goes to our current selfie culture. The girl who finally says, oh yeah, you are in that movie. Okay, you know, maybe you can come in for free. That girl takes her square flash Polaroid camera. Can I get a picture? And she's like, of course, very, very honored. And then she goes, yeah, maybe go by the posters so people know who you are. Now that Rick Dalton would have had a F-bomb fit if someone said that to him. She's like, oh, no problem. And she does a little, you know, like a spy girl pose next to the Wrecking Crew poster. I thought that was just a lovely tell.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, again, a wholesome, loving, adorable human being. Just, you know, there was, and maybe she wasn't that perfect in real life, but I'm glad she's depicted as such because she died. She and her baby both died as innocents. And it's it was a tragic end that has been undone.
Here, I've got a list of sections. I took the time to go to the script online, and I'll read the lines and get your take. We'll start with you, Matt. This is one of the first reveals about their relationship, and it's the Alan Kincaid character from whatever Screen Gems. He's in Hollywood, almost like a parody of Johnny Carson, and he's sitting twisted around looking at the camera, and in the background is Cliff and Rick, and they're on the set of Bounty Law, and they're describing he asked them what they do, and Rick says, he asks him if you've ever, about horse riding. He goes, but say I fall off the horse wrong and I sprain my wrist or I twist my ankle. Now that can put an undue burden on production because now maybe I can't work for a week. So Cliff here is meant to help carry the load. Then Kincaid says, oh, is that how you describe your job, Cliff? And Pitt's character pauses, what, carrying his load? Yeah, that's about right. That's the movie.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a crystallized nutshell of the before and the after. Matt, do you agree? I mean, you're a writer. You have written movie screenplays. I'm getting there. I've co-written one. I'm working on another one. So I've been marinating in Joseph Campbell and Blake Snyder and Sid Field and William Goldman and Robert McKee. This movie does not have a clear-cut beginning, middle, end with all of the regular beats. It's episodic. It's stories flowing into each other. There's a lot of shots that in most movies you go, come on, get to the point. A lot of walking shots with her. Almost, I was waiting for these boots were made for walking to come up in the background. A lot of shots of Cliff. That's because the movie, it's not in a hurry to get to the chase scene. It's almost like do you agree? It's like a Hitchcockian sense of waiting, anticipation with a little bit of fear. There's not
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that, we have been one of the best things and one of the worst things to happen to screenwriting is those books that you spoke about, because everyone feels now like, by page 30 they have to be here, and by page 60 they have to be here, and by page 90 to 120 they've got to be here, whatever. And Tarantino just says, I'm just going to tell a story the way I want to tell it. And in effect, it's almost like, I feel, it's almost like him being Cliff. like, you guys aren't telling me the way I'm going to do it, because I know the way I'm going to do it. And a lot of times in history with the great films, like, I mean, even if you look at what Ridley did with Blade Runner, you know, he was criticized over and over and over again, and the movie was a flop. And it only came until a few years later that they look back on it and go, this is a masterpiece. You know, I mean, like, this is an incredible film. But I think honestly, I think that, you know, a movie's great, and I can't really remember, apart from The Passion, in modern times, I can't remember a movie that I came out of that stayed with me, that I've been thinking about.
You're under its spell.
Yeah, I mean, like, really, there's so much. There's so many layers to it. And, you know, I always say as an actor, there are certain guys that you watch and you go, I can do that. You know, I could do that role. And then there's a couple of guys where you go, no, they're really special. Like, they're really, really special. Gary Oldman's one of those. Daniel Day-Lewis is another one of those. Tony Hopkins is another one of those. There's three guys who are otherworldly. And I think Quentin Tarantino he's always been a great filmmaker. Always been a great filmmaker. Like you said, Tim, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The last couple of movies I haven't really, like, enjoyed. This is on just a complete different level. Like, it's so layered. It has so much on so many different levels. And then you've got everyone brings their A game. Everybody involved. The DP is unbelievable. The sound is incredible. The editing is phenomenal. And then you've got Brad Pitt, and it's an understated performance.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable in this film. And even Leonardo Dicaprio, I think, you know, in his earlier films was incredible, and then kind of has been a little bit over the top in a couple of films that he's done. His performance in this is beyond the pale. I mean, he's really gone to where everybody, certainly as an actor watching him, I'm like, you know, this guy is so good. I don't know if he'll ever, you know, it's like, you know, the rock bands where you go, they make one album and it's phenomenal, and then they don't make another good album for the rest of their careers. And then
Don McLean.
Yeah, they keep doing it.
He didn't have to.
And there are others that keep doing it.
Yeah.
I think that it's just this synergy of everything coming together. And Margot Robbie, you just fall in love with her. Like, she's an absolute movie star, but you forget that it's her. And she's beautiful and innocent and all those other things that, like, in most movies, they'd have again a close off in the third scene. You know, they'd be exploiting her in some way or another. And Tarantino just doesn't do it. Like, every step of the way, he denies you that expected turn. And in itself becomes a turn. Now, oddly for us, we go, well, that's the kind of movie we want. Right? We don't want it to go to that place. We don't want it to go there.
Matt, if you took out the bad language, this would be the same moral tale as The Bells of St. Mary's.
Yeah. I want to read something very, very, very quick from a saint on this. But you were saying the moral vision, the moral premise here could have been written by St. Pius X.
Yeah, the fact is that other than the language, which is, I don't go through a single day of my life without hearing that language at work, at play, at restaurants, anywhere I go. It is the common vernacular now. Sorry to say, but it's reality. And so, does it bother me to hear those words? If I was bothered hearing it in a movie theater, how would I get through my day otherwise? Because in every meeting I'm in, anywhere I am except possibly in Mass, I hear that language.
And if it's a Jesuit parish, no, that's terrible. That's terrible. Don't encourage me.
And so the reality is that if you took away that language, just those curse words and those swears and the obscenities, there's no nudity. There's no despairing of what marriage is or shouldn't be or what human relationships should or shouldn't be. There's none of that. it upholds all of the virtues, as Bishop Barron says, just in the Cliff Booth character. And then throughout the film, the virtue and character displayed by virtually everyone is very well delineated and very clear. Mm-hmm. And so the tale itself is as good, as upstanding, as Christian, as Catholic as movies that would have been done in the 50s or 60s by Bing Crosby and others that were actually Catholic movies. Father Flanagan, The Bells of St. Mary's, any of those great classic Catholic movies, the virtues and everything that they talk about are in this movie. Mm-hmm. There is no difference other than it's in a common modern vernacular. That is the only difference. Yep. And I know people are offended by that common vernacular because of the four-letter words and everything else that are in there. But as Matt said early on, it does reflect a reality that existed back then, and it exists even more prevalent today, but it is a reality. What I hate is when Hollywood fictionalizes the world to make everybody divorced, everybody misgendered in some way. They have to overemphasize a problem to make it look like it's everybody has this problem or a big problem. And the reality is that's not the way humanity is. That's not the way the world is. And it shouldn't be our goal or expectation. This movie builds our expectations towards a greater goal.
There are two encyclicals written on films. One is 1936 by Pius XI. It's called Vigilante Curae. The other one is 1957. It's one of the last encyclicals that Venerable Pius XII wrote. That's called Miranda Prorsus. I don't know why I remember these titles. Miranda Prorsus. In that encyclical, Pius XII talks about the phrase he uses is the magnificent power of cinema. So a power that's magnificent can be used for good or for ill. Like the power of violence can be used by drug-addled hippies or a drug-addled cowboy. Here's the quote. This is from 1999. This is by an actor, playwright, poet named Karol Wojtyła, now known as St. John Paul II. This is number 10 of his letter to artists. The church has not ceased to nurture great appreciation for the value of art as such. Even beyond its typically religious expressions, true art has a close affinity with the world of faith, so that even in situations where culture and the church are far apart, as they are with church-going Christians in Hollywood, art remains a kind of bridge to religious experience. Insofar as it seeks the beautiful, the fruit of an imagination which rises above the everyday, art is by its nature a kind of appeal to the mystery. Here's the money line. Even when they explore the darkest depths of the soul or the most unsettling aspects of evil, artists give voice in a way to the universal desire for redemption.
There you have it. Bada bing, bada boom. That's a knockout punch.
I mean, Pat.
Yeah.
I think what Tim was going back to what Tim was saying as well is, as Catholics, we really want to strive for the truth, right? That's our main goal, is to strive for the truth in everything we do. Okay. And that includes filmmaking, which is the pinnacle of art. It is the number one art form.
Why do you say that, man?
Well, because it combines all the other art forms together, right? And it demands a synergy of all of them to produce something that is beautiful. So you can look at a picture, right, and you go, okay, there's a picture, but this is a moving picture. So just by its definition, it should be more difficult to do, right? And then if you put music or sound to that, then you're incorporating another element of it. Then you're incorporating performance art, and you're incorporating writing. So it's all those different things mushed together, and that's without the disciplines like editing and all these other things, which are not really considered to be traditional classic forms of art, but they are.
They are, yeah.
They will be in the future anyway. And so what we've done is we've abandoned it. Well, we've just said, hey, you know what? We can't pursue those truths. And the same thing that we criticize other people for is for putting agendas into films, when all we want to do is hear a story, right? We want to hear a true story, or a story that reflects truth in some way.
Yeah.
Right? That's all we're asking for. So when we're looking at, for example, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, if you took out the curse words, then you're changing the Manson family. Well, you're changing them. You're making them to become more virtuous than they really were, because they weren't. If you took out the reference that Pussycat did in the car, then you're changing the very nature of the characters that they were and the way that their virtue was compromised.
You'd be lying about them.
You'd be lying. You'd be lying. And we complain about that on the other side, right? About people trying to tell a story, certainly about Catholics, about the church, about this and about that, right? We complain about that and wring our hands about it and say, oh, you know, but then we expect to do it in our own art. And by the way, it's an R-rated film, right? So it's not like it's a hoodwink. It's not like, you know, people are going in there not knowing that there's going to be something in there. Now, like Tim and I will tell you all day long, I don't mind violence in movies at all. And I don't like particular language in certain films. The thing that I don't like is the cursing at taking the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, me neither.
Hey, it didn't bother me. I mean, and that's why you were saying about Stranger Things, like why do they use it so much in Stranger Things? But I think that what we're doing is we've abandoned this. And if you want to look back at all the beautiful, beautiful movies, and the Catholics were involved, like you cannot now, if we wanted to create a studio, we'd never make any movies, and they would never sell, right? Because people want to go to Mass on a Sunday who are funding these films and not be chastised by the guy next to them because there's a swear word in it, or there's a bit of violence in it. Like I went out, I did my movie with Tim, and Tim helped me with it. I Am That Man. The swear words all the way through it, and you know what? It's absolutely authentic with the way that these guys behave, and they respond to it that way. Mm-hmm. Is there a message of you know the importance of family and a father and all these other things? Yes, but you don't. I didn't want to sanitize it to such a degree where these guys go, "That's what."
Yeah, everybody's saying "gosh" and "darn."
Oh, flipping heck. It's right. Like, it doesn't work like that. And people, maybe some people somewhere are like that, but I know when I stub my toe on the bed, you know, that I'm not going, oh, golly gosh darn it. I mean, that's just, and you know this, Pat, like we all, the three of us, just for the viewers to know, we're all very real with one another, and we're all very, very real with our shortcomings and where we want to be. We're not pretending to be something that we're not. And I think that is sorely lacking. And oddly enough, you've got a movie in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that is changing the narrative of something, but still remaining true to those characters and those virtues. It's just so brilliant. And I hope that people will just get over those things, because when I look back at that movie, I don't think of all the swear words. I just don't. I don't even think, to be honest, I mean, apart from the end with a flamethrower, I just think of Sharon Tate's beauty.
Yeah, I do too. That's my lingering image.
Right? This glowing pregnant woman, and of Cliff being a complete dude that I want to meet. I want to go meet him. And you know what's interesting? I was watching I just watched an interview with Tarantino and the other key cast members. And Brad Pitt is just sitting there. Now, this is a guy, his entire career, that was the pretty boy, that was, you know, portrayed that way. Now he's the elder statesman. And he sits back, and he's so sure of who he is. Right? I'm like, man, like, you kind of love, because we all know, like, deep down that Brad Pitt's a cool dude, right? Like, you kind of know it, and you can see it come out in this character, I think, because you have to link to, as an actor, you have to relate to the character in some way. Yeah. And I kind of feel that it's not too far away from who he is.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link to his appearance on Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis. Did you watch Brad Pitt's interview? Oh, no. It's hysterical. Totally bizarre, awkward, and pretty brilliant. I'll put that in the show notes here as well. Yeah, no, it's all interesting stuff, Matt, about living in your own skin. And one of the things you said was that resonated is that if art doesn't reflect real life, it's just cartoon. It's just so superficial. It ends up being a Brady Bunch episode.
Yeah.
Tim.
Pat, can I go back to what you were talking about, the Vigilante Cure?
Yeah,
right?
for a huge fee. Yes, we can go back. Yeah, Vigilante Cure, 1936 encyclical. Yep.
Okay, so I don't know, my Latin's probably not as good as your Latin. I don't know any Latin. But what Vigilante Cure means to me is Brad Pitt becomes a vigilante at the end of the movie and cures the problem of evil. And I think it's a perfect description, because there are many people that would refer to that as vigilantism. Mm-hmm. Taking violence to stop a crime. Well, I'm sorry, but that's actually what we're obligated to do. It's not vigilantism. The police were called, but you'll note in the movie the police get there after the fact, and you see the one detective walking by, and all you see is a plastic evidence bag with a gun in it. You see a plastic evidence bag with a big dagger in it. You see a plastic evidence bag with another knife in it passing by the camera. And that's what the police did. They collected the evidence of the crime, took statements, one of which was entirely in Italian.
Oh, that was hilarious. Matt pointed something out to me that a good actor would note. It rings true when the Italian starlet, now wife of Rick Dalton, she's finally kind of unloading, and she's complaining about these SOBs in the middle of the house, and she goes on this rant, this tear in Italian, and the cop stops writing. He just starts listening. Yeah, so the cops, they arrive, and God bless them, but they were not the confronters of evil.
They can't be. That's not what the job of law enforcement is, and it's been dictated by the courts. The Supreme Court has said it. The police have no responsibility to protect anyone. And so the argument that goes on today about gun control and everything else, it falls down to this vigilante cure, because what are we obligated to do as human beings? We're obligated to fight for the defenseless. We're obligated to defend the weak in more ways than just physically. And this movie depicts doing that brilliantly. You have a guy that does what he has to do to the last ounce of consciousness. And it's beautiful because it's a religious war that he's fighting. And it's not depicted in that way, but it is, because the other side represents that evil that humanity has fought for eternity and will fight for eternity. And it's done in a beautiful, brilliant way. And I agree completely with both you guys about what is the lasting image that you have in the film. It is thinking of the beautiful, beautiful face of Sharon Tate living on, and Francesca's husband, Rick Dalton, living on, Brad Pitt and Brandy living on, because they fought evil.
Just one last comment on that, and then I'm going to throw another line at you gentlemen. There's a scene right after the cops have done their interviews. Jay Sebring says, "Hey, are you Rick Dalton? And what happened? What happened just now?" And he tells the story. Well, some hippies, and his contempt of hippies comes out. They broke into our house. We don't know why. And my friend and his dog killed two of them. And then sort of shyly, he kind of admits, and I burnt one to a crisp. But what I want to note here is something I noticed the first time around, and I watched it carefully the second time. The new Rick Dalton has begun to emerge because he takes ownership. Yeah, I killed an actual bad guy, girl in this case. And then early in the film, when they first arrive, Cliff and Rick together, who pulls up to their left into their driveway, but Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. And there's Rick, wistful. My gosh, the biggest director in the world. I'm one pool party from getting a movie with Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. Wow. Well, now he's on his own 2 feet as a man. Now he's able to be married through his sort of mentorship with the loyal Cliff Booth. He's kind of grown up. And what I loved about that scene is that when he hears Sharon Tate's voice inviting him up to meet her friends, he kind of, that Missouri non-Hollywood, the real Rick kind of comes out, and he kind of bends down and awkwardly, remember he gets close to the mic, the speaker. I thought that was so understated and subtle that, yeah, I'm a sinner and she's a beautiful woman. Now I can shed the pretense of always needing to knife my way to the next role.
Yeah, anyway. It was a beautiful scene. No, it was beautiful, and extremely well played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And you totally, at the last image of the film is a hug, and you just feel for this Rick Dalton, this weak man that has become stronger because now in his strength, he's finally realizing maybe what the goal was his whole time, and he may get it, and maybe now he actually deserves it because we feel for him throughout the movie.
He was finally able to say the other bookend line, which to me is, he knocks on the glass door. Cliff, you're a good friend. You're not my chauffeur. You're not my go-to. You're not my gopher. You're a good friend.
And he also doesn't brag. He doesn't brag about killing.
No, right. He just says it.
Yeah.
He says it Cliff-like.
He's not a Bruce Lee tough guy that would brag about, I killed this man, did that, and he has this humility about him, which I think is amazing. And you know what? Just one other thing about that, Pat, is that we speak all the time personally about God using flawed men to do great works. Classic example in this film. Right? Yeah. Just utter classic example where he comes in and he's a flawed man, and eventually he finds out really the person that he is. And normally you wouldn't have that person do something heroic. It'd end up, right, Tim, normally they go, okay, well, he's got to be messed up on drugs. He has to lose everything and go to a dark place and all that kind of stuff.
Well, if you think about all the pearl clutchers and the naysayers about this film and about films like it, they don't like the cursing. Okay, you don't like the cursing. Which is worse, lying and denying Jesus or cursing? I think we would all agree, lying and denying Jesus. Lying, I'm not a Catholic. No, I don't believe in God to protect yourself in a public setting. Well, what did the apostle, the leader, the first pope of the Catholic Church do on the night of Jesus' passion? Did he or did he not lie, deny Jesus, and abandon his faith and his God at that moment? He did. So are we afraid to see a movie about because he lies in it? What would be worse, Leonardo DiCaprio playing a role where he curses, or Leonardo DiCaprio playing a role where he lies? Clearly the lying is a worse trait, a worse human trait. And yet, the greatest of popes, the guy who founded and established the church after Jesus was suffered tremendously for us and for our sins, that man was still capable of incredible human failure. He lied.
Hours after saying, I'll die with you.
Yes, and so you look at that example, though, and we're not afraid to depict that. Well, why are we afraid to depict a real human today that maybe is doing something good but has a flaw in their use of the vernacular, the use of language, that they don't always go through the gosh darns and the gee whizzes? I don't get it.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think it's fair to say that didn't we have someone who used a curse word as well in the Bible?
Well, there's lots of potty words, including the Hebrew equivalent of the F-bomb. I cite this in my book, The Contraception Deception. Chagall does not mean gosh or darn. St. Paul uses, I'm going to use a profanity now, which is in the Word of God, shit. I count all things as shit compared to the knowledge of Christ Jesus. The 23rd chapter of Ezekiel is hardcore pornography. Jesus, his preferred mode is to hang out with hookers and the bad people, the pariahs. That's his preference. He has a preferential option for the marginalized and the worst of the worst, because those are the ones that he came for, not the well and the good people. But who, Matt? Now you've dropped the other foot.
No, that's it. That's what I was saying. I mean, it was Paul. Who said that, and we tend to forget this, and we tend to forget the utter scandal that is in the Old Testament, certainly, and we kind of go, "Oh, it's in the Bible, so that's okay." But the Bible is telling us a story, and we're learning from it. We're meant to learn from it.
The other line is one of the father figures. It's a short exchange. They have a couple of exchanges, and it comes at the moment where Rick has his meltdown. And Matt, you're probably right about this. That scene has the whiff of total authenticity, like an improv scene when he has his meltdown after he makes a mistake on the set. He has to ask for the line twice. Sam Wanamaker, kind of camp comic presentation, comes into the dressing room trailer, and there's Rick with his face in another bowl of ice water because he's hungover again. And he goes through the changes, the costume changes, the hair changes, and all that. And Rick's pushing back because he wants to be Rick Dalton on Bounty Law again. He wants to go back to that old mode. And the line that Wanamaker, the character, says to him is, "I hired you to be an actor, Rick, not a TV cowboy. You're better than that." That line finally gets through to him in the scene where he throws the little girl to the ground. And let me, because you were on a roll, Matthew. That line, "I hired you to be an actor, Rick, not a TV cowboy. You're better than that." Isn't that kind of the first time where a director opened up a window? I can actually take the next step if I just let go of my fear, which pays off when the little girl in his lap whispers, "That was the best acting I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah, no, it's a terrific moment. I mean, I remember when I got offered a job, and it was to be complete motion capture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they said, "No, we want you to play this character in motion capture." It didn't work out in the end for other reasons.
You were up against three Georges.
I was, yeah. But it was one of those moments where you go, they just want me for my performance. And it's a moment. You never think, like, you think as an actor, you go out and you do your thing and you're good, but you also know that you do fit a certain
kind of type.
Type. Like you're the bad guy, leading man, or whatever it might be. So it also shows the evolution of cinema and TV at the time, right? Because a lot of times people will come up and they go, "Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'll tell you, see," and they basically play themselves in every film. And then with the advent of really like Brando was the first one that started, really getting into the character and doing the mumbles. I mean, people mock it now, but that was revolutionary at the time. So, Rick Dalton would have gone through a period of time where he would have just played himself or this one character on several different shows. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing someone come in and say, "Hey, listen, you can be the character, you can do it, you can, embrace it." And Rick goes back from being a star to being an actor. Mm-hmm. And I think, and look, I mean, I love Timothy Olyphant. I think he's great in nearly every single thing that he does. And in that particular scene, Leonardo DiCaprio he just blows him off the screen. I mean, he's just so brilliant in it. He doesn't go too big. He's got a director that knows exactly how to capture a great performance, and he does a terrific scene. So it's an actor doing a terrific scene in a movie.
Yeah, and the movie within a movie is there. You don't see the crew at all. It's filmed as a standalone movie.
Yeah, it's really really great stuff. I mean,
things you can't do in a book, right?
I'll tell you now. For anyone who isn't involved in the industry that's watching this, I have seen people do exactly what he did. Like, that is absolutely true to life. Like
when he had his meltdown.
That meltdown! I've seen it.
Absolutely,
most definitely. I would say it was improv when he's in the trailer, like going. I've seen it, and I've seen people lose their lives like that. So Tim, because Tim dragged me to this film, he's actually a brilliant a judge of what is a good film. I'll give Tim that. The other one he said to me is, "You got to go and see Here Comes the Boom," and I'm like, "See Here Comes the Boom." Terrific film. I mean, very different to this, but a terrific Catholic film. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Nobody went to see it. But it captures the film industry perfectly, right, Tim?
Oh, absolutely.
It really does.
Yeah. No, everything. I mean, Rick Dalton walking into the Western town, sipping his cup of coffee, tossing the cup and the coffee on the dirt, and it's like the way. Oh, there's a grip somewhere. There's a PA that'll go pick that up. I'm not going to look for a garbage can. The attitudes throughout when he's walking in with his little Merce, gets out of the car, and the Western scene moves out of the way, and he says, "Hey, I'm Rick Dalton. Where am I supposed to be?" And you got the gaffer that's pushing the cart, the camera dolly up the hill, saying, "I think you're supposed to be over in wardrobe over there."
Yeah, they're waiting for you.
Yeah, and it's
loser, move your butt.
Typical movie star attitude. I've worked on a couple of very big TV shows where one of the stars of this one show shows up late every single day, and he thinks I'm the star. I can do this. I'm cocky. I'm arrogant. But he didn't realize the derision of the crew and what it does to them. All these poor people, 150 people working on that set every day, now can't start their day. Now they got to show up late at the end of the night home because this guy decided he wanted to make everybody wait an hour. And he eventually got, the fear of God put into him and straightened himself out a little bit. But, that's an attitude that a lot of stars have. And it's a difference between what you just said, an actor and a star.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Dalton became an actor again.
The Al Pacino cameo as Marvin Schwartz in that charming opening scene in Musso and Frank's. I think all three of us have been in Musso and Frank's. I used to do magic there each month. It looks exactly the same as it did in 1924. If you look at the old photos. Al Pacino does this action, and there's two little allusions. One is to Tony Montana from Scarface. Remember, Say Hello to My Little Friend. He does this. He's, he wants to offer him a job doing Western spaghetti leads in Italy, but he kind of takes him down one notch after another. And there's that reference to the violence of Scarface and also the innocent violence of Batman. He makes an allusion to Sock Pow, you know what I mean? And that pays off at the end. I don't know if you watched, I'm a credit watcher, so at the very, very end, there's an Adam West, Burt Ward public service announcement from LA Radio. I think it was 1966. It was such a lovely little, just another part of his homage to 60s Hollywood. So here's what I wanted to ask you as well. I wanted to ask you about whether you think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an indictment of Tarantino's other films that seem to exalt in violence, unlike the way this film does, or an indictment of Hollywood in general in its constant returning to themes of murder, death, war. I noticed in my second watch of the film that the billboards in the background they're all war films. They're all like Comanche revenge, bloody kind of depictions. So is this a kind of penance film?
I would say yes, and I think it is. It is a slam on Hollywood, and I think it's needed because Hollywood is all about sensationalizing, and it usually sensationalizes for the purpose of propagandizing. This is neither. Yep. This is, I go to the movie because I want to walk away from that movie theater smiling. And even though I've seen this movie 5 times in a movie theater with different people every time so I can get their reactions, because I'm truly trying to learn from this. And Matt just read a script I wrote last week, and I wrote it because I saw this movie so many times. And I wrote it in less than a week, wrote a first draft of a script because I was motivated by this film. And the great thing about it is you walk out of the theater. That's it. Anybody else
Tim,
walks out of that theater.
We had a little.
I don't care.
Yeah, just one sec. Can you? We had a little bit of a Canadian style freeze. Okay. You said you wrote a draft and a script in 1 week. You got to the finish line for the something that you showed other people, and you were inspired to do so because you watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Missed the next part.
And what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does for the viewer is make you walk away from that theater smiling. And anybody who walks away from that theater seeing that movie not smiling is a Manson family member. That's it. I cannot imagine any human being with a heart and a soul and a conscience of any kind not smiling when they're coming out of that movie. It's just not possible. And every time I think of it, and Matt, you said the same thing, I smile because it evokes happiness. I'm happy at so many things that happen in that movie. And so anybody that sees it, why do I go to a movie theater? I don't go to a movie theater because I want to walk away depressed, anxious, worried about the world. The world's going to end if we don't do A, B, or C. I hate that. I like to walk away from a movie theater and say, I'm now in a happier place than I was 2 hours ago. And in this case, it's 3 hours ago.
What a paradox in light of the subject. That's a paradox, Tim. In light of the subject matter, would you have predicted that? Walking when your wife was expressing fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to watch a bloodbath of a beautiful woman. Right.
Yeah, I know. But the reality was that each one of us walked out of there with a smile on our face and thinking back to scenes in the movie or the movie itself, we have smiles on our face. That's a beautiful thing. That changes culture. It does.
Yeah. Amen. Last comment, Matt?
No, I mean, I agree completely with Tim and you. I mean, I think that it's been a long time that I've seen a film that has affected me so profoundly on so many different levels, whether it be admiration for someone who is clearly at the top of his game, admiration for the actors who are clearly at the top of their game, the fact that someone made a movie that has themes in it that we've been asking, certainly me and Tim, and we've spoken about it before, these kind of things, themes that we've asked to be put into movies for a long, long, long time, and it comes out and you're like, this has everything. And it's just about, oddly enough, even though it's a fantasy, it's about being true, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not a moment in the movie where you go, that doesn't ring true.
Yeah.
And I think it's really brilliant. Even the part where with how outrageous the flamethrower is. And if you think about, if you took that last scene, mm-hmm. The last sequence, should have said, last act, where, they have that, and you put that in another movie that has a different first two acts, that could be conceived to be one of the most horrible endings of a film if you were to change and you didn't know what came up to it.
Yeah, if you dislocate it from its context,
Yeah, it just...
if you dislocated it from its justification.
Yeah.
Was the reality that happened in 1969.
So it shows you what Tim was saying earlier, that, you have a just war, and certainly for someone like Tim, who's a law enforcement officer that's been all over the world going after bad guys, that's why they see things very in a much more clearer spectrum, a much more clearer lens than we do, living in our lives, that we don't have to worry about terrorists shooting us or whatever. And so I think that I would really hope that people would take a different approach towards this movie and other movies like them, so that we can actually make beautiful art. Again, like, the church has been the steward of art for years and years and years and years. Yeah. And now we've just completely abandoned it because we want the appearance of piety when it's not.
Appearance of is the key phrase.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is, because I think that it's people that aren't really comfortable in their own skin being around that. I don't feel threatened by going and seeing something like that, because I have my own constitution that will allow me to either reject it or embrace it. But I think that if you look back, correct me if I'm wrong about this, if you go back to Rome, there was a period of time where they made statues, and then later on they said, we've got to cover all the genitalia of all the statues in Rome.
It happened with the John Paul II's cleaning of the Sistine Chapel. There was some pious brethren that wanted the genitals airbrushed or covered over, and no, John Paul II put his foot down.
No, but it is just not right. I mean, I get that, but by the way, it's not a simple thing if it's in beauty. I mean, what it is it's saying that is the intention when that was made, that it was a simple thing. Well, it's not, So I think that we have to kind of get over ourselves and understand. Right. It doesn't mean that we go and do that all the time. And I'm not, advocating for needless nudity. I actually think it distracts a lot of the time from the message.
Exactly right, Matt. I agree. Imagine the statue of David with a Speedo.
No, it's just insane.
Right. This is actually a good litmus test. Would you be uncomfortable if the statue of David was in the foyer of your parish church? And if you would, that says something about your appreciation of true art and the intention of the artist. Let me close on this, because I know you guys are super busy, and I want to thank you, first of all, for downloading all this rich content based on your experiences as a stunt performer, as an actor, as a writer. You're both writers, and so I've learned a ton, as I knew I would. But there's a song from the 90s, I think 1995, by a self-described feminist named Paula Cole, and it's called "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?" I wonder if Ms. Cole were to see this film, she'd have the answer to that question. They're right there. And a lot of the rise of second wave feminism is as a result of a failure in masculinity. And this movie is, I think, a traditionalist corrective to all the toxicities of false masculinity. Tim,
balance.
Sorry, yeah, balance, huh?
There's no balance now. It's not as
no balance now.
There's this. There's just this, and now you've got Tarantino coming out and going, "Well, I'm going to show you this," and it's such an anomaly today that people are going, "Hang on a minute," and it shouldn't be. And that's what I'm saying. All we're asking for is an honest reflection of society and of life. And even though it's not, the funny thing is, even though it's about Hollywood movie stars and it's about stuntmen and a world that many people don't know, you can still relate to it.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Because it's a human story that every single person goes through in their own way. It might not be, you're not a famous actor anymore, but it might be, hey, listen, you used to be able to run a 7-minute mile over 6 miles. You're getting older now you can only do it in 8, or your knees have gone. And we can all relate to that. And that's just genius filmmaking to stay with that through line. I mean, how many times do we watch movies and go, what world is this? I don't understand what this world is.
It doesn't connect.
Because they're not they're not searching for truth. They're pushing an agenda and they want to say something.
Well, what you both just said about the feminism and about the common themes in movies today, the fact that we just saw a movie where the two heroes, the protagonists, are both males, at a time when Hollywood is only promoting, especially big budget movies, female leads, female action leads. You have, and count them, any number of Marvel, DC Comics, other movies where it's only female leads now. They're trying to empower women in a way that's utterly ridiculous. I'm sorry, but what's her name? Who's the one that plays the Black Widow on the Avenger movies? Scarlett Johansson. Okay, is what, 5'2", 5'3", and in movies she's knocking a guy Matt's size out with one kick, one punch, whatever.
Yeah, there's a long list of them. Atomic Blonde, the Star Wars reboots. Yeah.
Everything. They're doing it everywhere now. When you see this movie, when you saw it last night, I guarantee that of the trailers you had to watch when you were waiting for the movie to begin, there were 4 or 5 trailers of action movies led by women. I have no problem with women doing anything as long as there's some basis in reality. And there is no basis in reality in a lot of what's done because they're trying to minimize the effect of men on the world and improve the stance of women. Well, women don't need to be improved. Women are the most important human beings on the planet. Without them, we have no planet. We have no civilization because we have no human beings. And it's, when people are critical of the Catholic Church because we don't have female priests. We don't need female priests. We have the most tremendous examples of females in the history of humanity, the first of which, of course, is Mary. And why is she so prominent in Catholic culture and tradition and doctrine is because of how important she was to humanity and the saving of humanity. And so we have our role models of females. And I look at my wife, a mother to, giving birth to our 8 children, and we adopted one, so mothering our 9 children. Matt's wife, your wife, Pat, we all have incredibly strong women in our lives. And we don't need these false narratives to be portrayed. I don't want my wife going to war. I don't want my wife to be in a knife fight with Jason Statham and win, because it's not real. But what is real is a guy like Cliff Booth throwing a couple of punches at a guy, or sticking his dog on another guy and throwing a dog food can at somebody. That was a very real fight scene in the end. It was real. It was based on reality. It was based on anger and fear of evil and an equal opposition to that evil. And thankfully, it wasn't Francesca. She threw a punch. It was apropos, and she ran away. But it wasn't Francesca coming in and beating the crap out of 3 armed people, because that's what Hollywood asks for today, but it's not what reality demands.
100%. Yeah. Something you just said, Tim.
Want me to repeat it all?
No, not that. I was thinking about you were talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Jewish mother who gave the word flesh. The Catholic Church, puts women above any other worldview, and totally revolutionized how women were treated in this world. But it's going to come back to me. Matt, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's nobody. I mean, you're the father of 2 girls. I've lost count of how many girls Tim's got. I've got 4. So it's not that we...
Six.
You got 6.
6 estrogen Americans.
Just so you guys know, I officially became a grandfather. The baby will be born in March, but
all right, congratulations, Granddaddy-o.
Yeah.
You do not look 75, Tim. Go ahead, Matt.
But we want, I think that there's a lot of people think that when you say that you don't want those things, it's saying that you don't want your daughters to be able to do whatever they want to do, right? Or, to pursue a certain path. That's absolutely not the truth. And in fact, a lot of people who don't have daughters are the ones that will point the finger, and we're like, well, hang on a minute, we've got daughters. We got more of a vested interest than you guys. Tim is 6, you got 2, I've got 4. So we want, them to be able to do what they want to do. But what we don't want is them to be forced out of doing what they want to do, which is what it is right now. In the same way, I look at, I have no problem, with, I think there's a difference, just a little segue. There's a difference between Black Widow, which is, Scarlett Johansson's character, has no superpowers, right? She has none. And Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel, who is playing someone who has a bunch of, which, in a sense, Tim, it's the same thing as giving a woman a gun, right? Because you give a woman a gun, it equalizes stuff.
Yeah, equalizer,
Immediately, there's an equalization. But then you hear Brie Larson come out and say, I don't want, or whatever, that I'm paraphrasing it, I don't care if, men come and see my film.
Yeah, I don't care about half my audience.
Why? Why not? Well, because we're men? Or, you don't care if your dad comes to see it, or your brother, or, why the animosity? And again, I think that what we're saying is there's no, I always say, why the hell is Hawkeye in the Avengers? He's special powers, he's good at shooting arrows. I mean, and you got the Hulk. It'd be all over. I get it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this strange thing. But we have no balance, right? There's no balance in this world at all. In the film world, there's no balance. So we don't get. We used to have it, you'd have the kind of ultra masculine. And I've been very lucky to work with him, with Sly, who's in great shape, plays a hero. And then you add everything in between to the other side. But now there's not that.
The balance is gone. Everything is askew. And I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a restoration of that balance. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. And my gosh, we're longer form. But so in thanking you, I want to remind listeners, including Mr. Tarantino, if you're listening, and I know you've watched this whole interview. I need to interview you on my show, and these 2 gentlemen need work. But I was going to say that Thomas Aquinas teaches that vengeance is a virtue, not blood oath revenge. It's not comeuppance. It's not mob rule. It's not a bunch of people with pitchforks and lanterns, but vengeance. And vengeance properly executed with this sense of proportion and what you just said, Matt, balance, is just depicted in a larger than life. It's a longer than normal film. You're not going to notice. So Tim Clemente and Matthew Marsden, thanks for being gifts, and honored to call you brothers.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe next time we'll talk about Catholics for Truth and Justice.
Let's do it.
Was that a hint dropped? Did you hear that? Hint being dropped. Okay, guys, thanks so much. If you like this content, you might enjoy joining Coffin Nation. It's coffinnation.com to get on the waiting list. The Patrick Coffin Show podcast drops every Tuesday morning. That's patrickcoffin.media. patrickcoffin.media. patrickcoffin.media/show to get the podcast itself. All the links of the things that we mentioned today in this episode, which is normally a video commentary, are found in the links below here in YouTube. If you like it, comment, spread it around, keep in touch. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?